Welcome to A Well-Designed Business with your host, LuAnn Nigara. LuAnn has a lifetime of experience building a multi-million-dollar business with her husband and cousin, and she knows the challenges you face in your interior design business. LuAnn brings you real-life answers to your most pressing problems, as well as practical strategies to explode your interior design business. So, let's get to the business of interior design.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Power Talk Friday on A Well-Designed Business. I have a special treat for you. My husband Vince is joining me today. Hi Vin, how are you?
How are you?
I'm giggling just because you're here. That's how I am.
Long time no speak.
I know, right?
What was it, number 78 in the chain?
Yes, you were originally on episode number 78. And I am trying to think, what did we talk about? We talk about what advice that we would give, that you would give to young entrepreneurs starting out in their business. And we talked about establishing their mission and their core values and their systems and all of that good stuff. So if anybody is interested in all of that, please go back and listen to number 78. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my husband in case you are not familiar with him, because I would have to say, Vincenz, anybody who listens to the podcast probably feels like they know you as well as they know me. But just in case, I'm going to give him a little of your street cred, okay? Mm-hmm. All righty. So he is the brains behind the finances at WindowWorks. He has an accounting degree. He has his MBA in business. He has been our fearless leader at WindowWorks for 35 years this month, December in 2017. And you have really have achieved a certain level, a very recognizable level of stature within our window treatment and awning community. You've served on many advisory boards, both marketing advisory boards and operations advisory boards for WindowWorks and for Durasol, which is the awning company that we most often use. And then you also served for about a 2-year period as the vice president of franchise sales for Decorating Den, right, Vin?
A little shorter than that, but yes.
Okay. So the deal is that you got some cred, okay? That's what I'm trying to say.
And I've got your envelope with cash waiting.
That's right. So the thing is, Vincenz, that I've had a lot of people recently ask me to address the topic of husband and wife teams working together. And this episode, Power Talk Friday, is coming out on December 14th, and we just had on December 12th an episode with Shea and Syd McGee of Studio McGee. So if you missed that episode, you want to go back and listen to that one. And they are also a husband and wife team. So this is like a little series. I've got a couple of others that are scheduled and coming up. And we're going to talk today then about how we have been able to be in business all these years together and still like each other, let alone love each other, right?
Absolutely.
So I have my certain opinions on this, okay? I have things that I believe that have contributed to our success in being able to do this. And let's just, make sure everybody also realizes that it's not just you and I as a husband and wife team, but our third partner is our cousin, Billy. So it's not even another third person in this dynamic, but it's another family member in the dynamic. So I have developed my opinions on why we're successful, and I know that we probably share some, and maybe, you have some that are different. Do you want to start with what you think are some of the core reasons why we've been able to do this so many years together?
Sure. It's actually it's been overwhelmingly a beautiful experience for me. I think that we both recognize, actually the three of us recognize each other's talents and strength. And we set forth right from the beginning in trying to work within our strengths as opposed to improving our weaknesses. I think that's been a real key to not only being able to work and stay together, but to the success that we've experienced at WindowWorks.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, because I've talked about it on the show a lot, is, when you are hiring your first, if you're a solo and you're hiring your first employee, you want to turn around and sit down with yourself and make a list of the things that you're really good at and the things that you're not good at, the things that you like to do, the things that you don't like to do. And then your first hire really should be the person that can do the things that you're not good at and the things that you don't like to do. And what you're describing in there is that you said that we never try to, we figured out what each of our strengths were, and instead of trying to, like, let's just say, make me good at numbers, okay, we each worked to what our strength was, and we each cultivated what we were already innately good at, and we always try to get better at that, letting the other partner pick up where we were lacking, right?
Yes, I think the fortunate part, and this is truly was just a gift from the universe, was that you and I have distinctly different strengths, and they both lend themselves to running a successful business, and in my opinion, running our lives successfully. And Billy, of course, adds his particular strength of patience and high-level mechanical intelligence to the overall thrust of what we're doing. Frankly, from my standpoint, I could do what he does, but I couldn't do it to his level. Right. For the two reasons I just mentioned. One, he's more patient than I am, and just in general. And two, his mechanical skills and mechanical intelligence exceeds mine. So recognizing that, and I say again, a gift from the universe, because Billy's my much younger cousin that truly, if I had a half a dozen interactions with him before he came and asked to go to work with us, right, it would have been a lot. So I really knew him as a relative, but didn't really know him at all. And it turns out that it was, again, a gift from the universe, with his skills fit our needs so clearly that it's worked great for everybody. And I think critical in that is that, aside from what I just stated, we then allowed that to work. We didn't encumber him with our feelings and control and of the aspect of the business that he handles. Mm-hmm. And in terms of you and I think it's the same code that we go by. Mm-hmm. We both realize that we can do similar things, but is the business benefited most by allowing you to do what you do best and me to do what I do best? It's worked fabulously. And I think for your listeners, look, if you're a one-person operation, obviously you're doing everything. There's no need to think about strengths and weaknesses. But if you're a multi-faceted company, a company doing a few $1 million in business like we do, and you need lots of hands involved, we have not micromanaged ourselves or our relationship, and we certainly don't micromanage our staff. What we've done is we've tried to hire people with what I always term a motor. It's not something that you have to stay constantly on top of them. They're looking for something to do every day to accomplish the major goals of the company, which is obviously to foster sales and make customers happy. Once you find those people and you have them in place and they've been trained properly, it's incumbent upon us to let them work in their field and do what they do well. And I think we've done that really well. Yeah. In terms of our internal relationship, you and I think that it has been as good as it's been for a couple of reasons. I think, first of all, you have to have a very strong basis of love and caring, which we have, because, as you well know, things will crop up that will test that.
They will? Don't tell everybody that.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think I started this, we're starting our 36th year, and I believe you're 35 in it. Yeah. And I can only recall two two times where the staff had to leave
the building or
yes,
be roadkill.
yeah, and let you and I work out the logistics of whatever that was. But that's incredible, really. And so it's been a lifelong thrill ride for me, Frank.
Yeah, no, me too. So, all right, Vincenzo, I'm going to do what I do to all my other guests. I'm going to go back now and pick apart the things you said. Yes. So, and really just highlight some of the things that you said in there. So, one of the first things that you said is in describing each of us, and we found our talents and we knew our innate skill set. Our zone of genius is what I talk about on the show, that it is. And once we knew what those things were, and 100% agree, the universe gifted us, that each of us, you know how I talk to everybody, Vin, about the book, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And that, every business to be successful needs the manager, it needs the entrepreneur, and it needs the technician. And of course, you and I both take umbrage at the word that the one person is called the entrepreneur, because we know all three of those personas are entrepreneur, but that's how he describes it. And so we quite naturally, I have said this on the show before, we quite naturally are these three roles. Billy is clearly the technician. And in WindowWorks world, we call him the artiste, let's be real. Right? And
he calls himself that, actually.
Yeah, well, we're on board. He's right. And then, of course, you're the manager. You're the one that oversees and, plays the chess game and says, okay, it's time to, reevaluate the credit card, processing payments. And it's time to hit up all the vendors for different discounts. It's time to sell a truck. It's time to buy a truck. It's time to take on a new lease for a building. It's time to buy a building. You're that guy. Okay. And then I'm the person that has often pushed us out of our box. I don't know if you remember, when I wanted us to have a website, and it was 100 years ago, and you're like, who needs a website? And then like 2 years ago, let's have a podcast. Who needs a podcast? And so we are all quite naturally separated. And then of course, then you drill down and you have further skills and talents that a lot of our additional skills and talents are overlapping. So you and I are, well, here's I was going to say, you and I are both skilled salespeople, but you and I are both not skilled financial people. I'm going to out myself there. So, but the thing is, I think that I know that you've said it to me, that we agree that if we had to pick a salesperson between the two of us, that my skill set is higher and better there. Would you agree on air in public?
Absolutely.
And so,
you have a knack for taking things that we both know and putting them way better than I could ever dream of into words.
Right. And that is a big part of sales, is really that listening skill and really discerning what your client is saying in words, but what your client is not saying in words. And that's how you really can satisfy and really close the sale, because you've really gotten to what their true need was. And sometimes people don't really have words to express it, but if you can discern it, then and present it, then they buy from you, and it's great because you've sold them what they want, and that's the win-win. But so the thing is, and there was a period when you were at Decorating Den when I had to do all of the operations and the sales. And again, it's like, you're a skilled salesperson. I can run the business if I have to. It's not my zone of genius. It's not even my happy place. Like, let's be serious. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and so that's good. And so, but the thing that I wanted to express in there, and I think this is the lesson, when people talk to us about how do you stay happy and run your business, the huge thing that you said, and this is the number one thing that I agree with also, is once you've established the lane for each of you, so this partner is going to be responsible for these tasks, this partner is going to be responsible for these tasks, then you have to get out of the way and let the other one do it. And you and I sometimes can truly disagree on something, and passionately disagree on something, but we have this code that if it's my part of the business, I get final say. If it's your part of the business, you get final say. And that saves us from a lot of those arguments that I feel that in our career together, when we've talked with other people that are married and they struggle, and because they're repeating arguments that have no solution, right? You're just having this.
Yeah, I would only add this little caveat to that is ultimately, if an idea comes up, whoever is the manager of the money in the business has to have the final say on whether something works or not, simply because it has to be financed, whatever move you make. So
yes, big decisions.
I don't want to mislead your audience. It's not a case where we run willy-nilly after an idea when it could bankrupt us. So there's always that money issue that plays in, and you have to, as the money manager at WindowWorks and a well-designed business, you have to always, you have to consider, you have to consider, and you have to be a bit of a risk taker, but you have to consider the benefits, the possible benefits down the road against the expense. And of course, you make your decision from there based on whether or not you think something will fly.
Right. So, okay. And so I'm going to clarify that. So you're exactly right to not mistake that level of that. It always has to be a smart financial decision. Otherwise you're not running a business. Right. And so, but that's exactly true. And that's the macro view of it. So even when I wanted to do the podcast, I've said to the listeners before, I had to come up with a business plan. I had to be there with my notebooks and my lists and what was going to happen and how was I going to market it and what were going to be the monetization revenue streams, and how was I going to make this thing go from an idea to a thing. But what I was more referring to is the micro view of things. So, for instance, there are 15 decisions that happen in a week regarding the podcast that I don't run by you. You know what I mean? I only run them by you when they involve money or traveling.
And nor do I want them run by me. That's another key, I think, for your audience.
Right.
Those control freaks that are out there, you got to let go.
That's what I was trying to say. You're catching me with the clarification that if it's someone's area, they have the final say. The clarification is unless it's a money decision, then you come together as partners and make sure that the money manager partner is got their thinking cap and making the final analysis of it. But what we're talking about is in the day-to-day of running something, it's you have to have that trust and the respect that you have together as a husband and wife, or in our case, a triad, decided that this is this person's place where they are a rock star. Don't overthink them. Don't clip them down, and don't, like you said, micromanage them to the point that they can't get something done. And that's what I have found is a stick point. And I feel like part of the stick points in the couples that we've talked to over the years is because they miss that first step. And I think that first step is very important, where you and I think sometimes why the first step is missed, where you're deciding which is each of your area that you will quote unquote have more or less domain over, is because sometimes people's innate skills overlap more than ours do. And that gets difficult. So if we were both money people, then I might every day challenge you and go, why did you do that? And why are we doing that? And I don't agree this. You know what I'm saying? And so I learned very early on, like, stop, it's like trying to run a marathon without any practice. It's like, you've already been practicing. Why am I going to sit there and double check what you're doing? So I just let it go. But what if we both had the same skill? Now, I think what has to happen in that regard is you still make your list of what one is very good at, what the other is very good at. But now when you come to that second list, what do you like to do? It might be different there. So you might both actually be a very smart, financial, analytical person, but maybe one person in the couple doesn't really care to be the money manager. And so that's positive, and that's a win. Let's take it a step further. What if? Go ahead.
God, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think there's another aspect to it. The aspect being on the back end. Often things work and they work beautifully and everybody's happy. But I think we've had our experiences where we both, or the three of us, signed off in a direction and it didn't work. And the big thing is to not throw that back at each other.
Oh, no.
For your couples, not to come back with, constantly bringing up this didn't work. If you all sign off on it, it's a done deal. It didn't work, and move on. Put it aside.
Right. No, I mean, and that's the thing. So your step one is figure out what each is going to have domain over. Step two is if they overlap. Now look for preferences of there. If preferences also line up, then you have hard decisions to make. You can't both watch the money and somebody not make rain. Somebody's got to go make rain and somebody's got to count the rain when it comes in. That's how it goes. And then somebody has to execute. So, and then once you do get involved, and we do it when it's a big decision, even if it is a money decision, which is your domain, big money decisions get run by us. It's sort of like the analogy I made with the podcast. Yes, it was a decision between the three of us to launch the podcast. But daily, I make every decision with the podcast. I don't come to you and Billy and say, oh, and by the way.
Well, the basis of that, of those decision-making processes and the ultimate results is respect.
Right.
If you have respect for your partner, either your partner in life, your partner in business, or in this case, both, you have to move on from those decisions, good and bad.
Right.
So, and if you don't have the basis of respect, it's not going to work.
Right. Well, and that's where I was going with it, was because when you do come together as a couple or a triad like we are, and you have the big decision to make. So what I was going is even if it's a financial decision, if it's a big financial decision, then we're going to make it together. And that was my analogy to the podcast. So little everyday decisions of the podcast, you guys don't get involved in. Little everyday decisions on finances, we don't get involved in. Billy and I don't if you're going to buy a truck, you're going to sell a truck, we don't care. You tell us, but we don't care. We're like, okay, you want to buy a truck, go buy a truck, whatever. But when we're going to buy a building, we all sit down, we talk about it, we blah, blah, blah. And then to your point, if we have come to a decision together and we've all decided, this is what we should do together. If it doesn't fly, if it blows up in our face, we never stand there and go, but you were the one who really wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. We
That's
just
right.
move on, just pick up and move on, go forward. It's done, right?
Yeah, exactly right. You can't hold anybody's feet to the fire if collectively, as a couple, or in our case as a triumvirate, you can't hold anybody's feet to the fire for a decision you all sign off on, or both sign off on in the case of a couple. So It gets you through life. I mean, because, probably, it's funny, I had a meeting with the installers this morning, and I was mentioning to them that probably 30% of their lives are spent at Window Works. And in essence, we are married, and we need to look out for each other's idiosyncrasies and make concessions for each other's behavior and how we go about doing things. The one thing I did say was there's only one place where I micromanage them, and that is when they're in the home doing their job.
Right.
We don't tolerate anything out of line in that case. Otherwise, they get flexibility and they're able to move around in their roles. And that applies to you and I as a couple in business, except 80% of our time is spent together, which, for me personally has been wonderful. It's hard to explain, but now that you're doing a lot of podcasting, and I don't see you during the day, I actually miss you.
Yeah, I know.
And so it comes from that basis of, as I mentioned right in the beginning, it comes from a basis of love and caring and respect. And if that is paramount in each couple's thoughts as they go about living their lives and more, and what we're talking about, operating their business, they're not going to have many issues. It's going to just flow, as ours has.
It's true. And the thing is, that doesn't mean it's always easy. Okay. So I think it's, as you say, it's easier when you truly do love and care for each other, because ultimately when you really do love and care for somebody, you're not about making them the bad guy or the guy that you're going to blame, or, making them look bad or any of that stuff. So the point is, because that's, I think, the push in, being in business with a spouse or a family member. You can't allow that we see. I think what it is we don't do it in our personal life, so we don't do it there. But we're never like, it's you can't be so familiar that you say whatever you think and feel in the business context like you might in the personal context. But we don't really do it in personal either. That's the point. You know what I mean? It starts with, like you said, the respect. But I think that that's where it can break down.
That just flashes me back to a relative that worked for us, that we had that problem. And I finally had to nicely ask them to look for a job elsewhere.
Right.
And that level of respect, or that fine line of familiarity and walking through a business day has to be observed.
Right.
All the time. So
right. It's like what we used to say to Christy when she was pitching. We used to say to her, I don't want to walk into the softball game and look at you on the pitcher's mound and know if you're winning or losing based on your face.
Right.
Right? It's like, keep it locked down.
Without doing it. Right. Exactly.
No whining on the pitcher's mound, no gloating on the pitcher's mound. Just do your job. And that's the same with us. There's like, we're human beings. We can have a full-blown crazy pants thing happening at home. We walk through that door. It's like, lock it down.
Yep.
No slamming doors and no all this crap. Yep. Just lock it down. Do your stuff. And so, look, does that mean we've never had an argument in front of an employee? We've never had a disagreement? Does it ever go from 1 to 3? Yeah. It's like you said, it's gone from 1 to 10 2 times in 34 years. Okay. But for the most part, it's just like, okay, breaks here. This is not a grandstand. This is not productive, And I have to say, most of the time for me, the thing that I'm like really crazy about, and it's just like, you've got to be kidding me. By the time I say to myself, table it, you'll talk about it tonight. By the time the night comes, I'm like, whatever. It's like, all right, I don't care about that anymore.
That's a fact. I think we have both, I should say, the three of us. I don't want to keep eliminating Billy from this thought, because he's not involved in the day-to-day as much as you and I are. Right. So, but if you always keep the big picture in mind, and that being the success of your business,
right,
and that kind of tempers all the other little microcosm events that happen on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
Right. I remember talking with somebody that was in business one time with her husband, and she was saying, I just can't. I can't do it anymore. It's just so horrible. I hate going to work, blah, blah, blah. And, was talking with her and discussing with her, some of the day-to-day things that were making her so unhappy. And it was that they literally and I think it was easier for them because they didn't have employees. So when something that they didn't disagree with, they literally would disagree in the way you might disagree over a personal thing. And I remember saying to her, you guys need to pretend that the other person is a stranger boss. Like, if you worked for a different company and your boss or your partner pissed you off, you'd never just go full hog wild on that boss or partner. How many, you'd have some decorum. You've had some self-control. You might be very passionate and you might be really disagreeing about the scenario, but you take the time to present it intelligently with facts and background to make your case. You wouldn't just stand there and scream and yell and carry on. And that's the danger. I know when we're
definitely not perfect in that area.
No, we're not perfect. perfect in that area, but I know that I'm going to get a heck of a lot further with you if I come to you rational with facts, as opposed to I just want it this way and stop. You know?
Yeah.
So anyway, so it's sort of a little bit of, you know, it definitely respect goes a long way. And then it's kind of, you know, when you disagree, you agree to disagree. It's just like, that's it. Move on.
Yeah.
You know,
we've had many instances where we have agreed to disagree, and one of the three of us has just, or two of the three of us have just said, that's that person's area of expertise, and I'm butting out of it.
That's right.
Plain and simply.
That's right.
For the good of the whole.
Right.
That's
right.
basically what it's about.
Right.
So,
I have to say, we feel like we can. I know that we personally feel like, oh, I can name all the times that, you know, Billy wanted something a certain way that we didn't agree with, right? Because like we're different from Billy. His whole end of the business is different than our end of the business is, right? But I know for a fact that Billy has the same thing. He's like, well, I think they're both crazy right now, but that's what they do, so we're gonna go for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you just have to trust. And I think too that in the beginning you have to put trust and faith. You have to just have faith that you respect and know the other person's expertise is, even if it's just 10% better than yours, you have to let it go. Now we have the gift of, I don't question you. You know, when it's your area, I don't question it anymore. I question things that I feel like you overlap into my area, I'm just going to say. But when it's your area, it's like, all right, fine. I don't even worry about trying to figure it out anymore. Right.
I think we should paint a real good picture for your audience also in this regard. It wasn't always like that.
No.
When I first started Window Works, the age difference alone between you and I and Billy, 15 years,
right.
needed more of my direction and more of my vision and more of my input. But that hasn't been we're going into our 36th year. And I'm going to say that was for the first 15. Mm-hmm. And for the last 20, it's been a real, true, even level partnership in terms of running and operating Window Works. So
yes, I know you're exactly right. And I have often said how generous you were in that regard, because
I didn't point it out for that reason.
No, I know that you did.
There's probably a lot of startup couples out there, and somebody's going to have a very strong expertise, and that, you know, particularly in the money area,
right.
in the finance area, that really needs to take precedence. But once it gets established and people grow into their roles, it's really a smart thing to do, to let people work within their strengths and empower them and let them run with what they do well.
Well, and it's true because, you know, Billy and I are the same age. You're 15 years older than us. So we were babies. We're 20 years old when we start working for you. And that's what it was in the beginning. We worked for you. It was, you know, and even when we became partners, you know, whatever, a couple years later, it was always in the beginning, well, you know, Vin runs the place and he installs and I sell. And then, as you said, you know, within 15 years, at least, no more than that, you know, now we're all moving and growing and being more lateral to each other, as opposed to like you just described. And so, but the thing is, I have to say, that's another lesson that really should be expressed, is that when you start out, you are going to have, and you should, that's the biggest message of this, that you should delineate responsibilities. That's the number one way to start your ship and your thing on the right track, okay? But allow for people's strengths to grow. Allow for people. You did that as you saw that I was more innovative in marketing, or more, you know, willing to look at different technologies and things like that. You didn't go, you know, I'm running this. I'm in charge. What are you doing? You know what I mean? So it's another lesson, as you describe it, is to really let people grow into their positions and let them evolve. And the zones of genius might alter a little bit. I mean, I don't want the day to come that I have to take care of the money, but it might. I don't know.
and for a while when I was at Decorating Den, you did it well.
Yeah.
And and I mean, in light of what your point you just made, you are inherently better as a hire, and I'm good at the fire, because when we finally get to that point, it's, I've turned the corner, but it hasn't happened often. But in terms of hiring, you're much better at interviewing and evaluating people as they come through the door. I get to know them better, and I can evaluate them as I get to know them.
Right.
You have a better instinct about someone when they come in. So,
well, it goes back to my questioning and my listening skills.
Yes, it does. But I recognize that in conjunction with, being pulled in 40 different directions when we were a smaller company. I had to let go of that. So
right.
I
That's
said, okay, she's better at this, and let her do it.
Right. And we didn't consciously say it. I remember I just said after 1 or 2 hires that were like disasters, I was like, can I just do this, please? Yeah. And you were like, fine, do it. And then you were like, oh, she's pretty good at it.
Yeah.
So, but
that's happy to get rid of it.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, but that's the lesson in there is to not stand there and say, but this is what I do. I do this. So you have to know what you're good at and know what you do well. But when you see your partner develop skills that maybe they didn't possess when you first started business together, but they have cultivated those skills and they have perfected those skills, then don't stand there and just say, oh, wait, maybe we put that on my column 10 years ago. Like the column, look, we sit down and we reevaluate our business and ourselves and our employees every year in January, right?
Yes.
What are we doing? Where are we going? What's happening?
Correct.
Blah, blah,
Where
blah.
have we been? What worked? What didn't work?
Right.
Who's working? Who needs a review?
Right.
Where
do you need help? What do you need help with?
Exactly.
And it's true. And maybe, 1 year it was my responsibility to do something, and I come to the January meeting. I'm like, I got to get off my plate. You got because now I've taken these 3 things, and this has to go. You know what I mean? Or vice versa. So, I think it's pretty good. So I don't know what the bottom line is here, Vincenz. I think the bottom line is that it starts with, really, like you said, you have to have a deep respect. You have to, what it is it has to pain you to see the other person hurt. I think that's, we always are going to have fights. We're always going to have arguments. But I have learned that I don't feel better if I've created pain in you. I've learned, no matter how right I feel about something, if in order to get that point across to you, I create pain in you, it's not worth it. And so it doesn't mean I'm perfect at it every day, my love, but it's what is in my mind. It's like, okay, what are you doing? So.
And I think in terms of this discussion, it always has to revert back to the big picture. Right. What is best for my business?
Right.
And if you keep that in mind, it tends to diffuse.
Right.
A lot of the nonsense that goes on.
Right, right. And then the one other last topic I want to talk about, because a lot of people are like, should you turn it off at 5:30 when you get home? First of all, I don't remember ever getting home at 5:30, but should you turn it off when you get home? And what about the weekends? And we have never, ever had this rule of turning it off and turning it on. We've had moments, wouldn't you agree? We've had moments where we're like, okay, can we just not talk about WindowWorks today? But we've never, I think the kids have been raised hearing every single day that happened at WindowWorks at the dinner table, right?
Yeah. Again, the big picture here is we've been so fortunate in the life it has built for us that I think it would be downright foolish to put a time on the clock and say, we're not going to talk about this. Absolutely. I don't care. I don't care if the building's burning. We're not talking about that after 6 o'clock at night.
Right.
We've been conscious of each other's level of interest after hours, so to speak. If there's been after hours, we're always on.
Right.
But in general, no, I don't find that. Not for us. That would not have worked.
No. And I just think, to me, that's a lot of the times when we are doing and talking about the things that have always been the propeller of the business. That's not only are we having the micro conversation about a particular installation that went south, or a particular challenge on closing a particular sale, or going after a particular something or other, but it's also when that's the time that we have the times to say, oh, so next year, should we buy a building? And so next year or this month, should we sell 2 trucks or something? Or should we hire somebody? Or I'm overwhelmed, I need help. So I just think that you can't necessarily, in the middle of a busy day when you've got 7 or 8 employees and phones ringing, go, by the way, can we talk about how we can restructure my workday? Because I'm swamped.
Yeah.
It's like, need a little help.
and very often it's there. And, we help each other. But I do think, in terms of that question, that we have a passion. And people who are going into business need to have a passion about what they're doing.
Right.
It certainly develops and builds a lifestyle off of it. And there shouldn't be any holds barred, whether it's 11 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock in the morning. If something needs to be talked about by either party, you got to talk about it.
Right.
And the worst thing that can happen is something festers.
Right. Right,
that creates bigger problems than anything.
Absolutely. And by contrast, too, we have both always recognized that the tremendous, tremendous gift of being self-employed is that we can draw the line in the sand when it's something that we want to do. So when the girls played softball, it's like, oh, there's a 3:00 game 2 days a week from, March, 15th until May 30th. Guess what? Put it right in the calendar. Take LuAnn Vin right out of the calendar at 2:30 to 6:00 every Tuesday and Thursday for 3 months. And if the boys had something, then that's it. Who's got a guitar lesson or who's got this, whatever. It just came out of the schedule. And that's like, we don't have to sit there and say, oh, I have to have a vacation day, or I have to, do whatever. And so that's
another gift of
what
what
I'm saying. It's the gift
no doubt
of it.
About it.
Yeah.
And we don't want to mislead anybody either.
I know what you're going to say.
After dinner and getting them settled in the house, we were back working.
That's
either
right.
at that to make up that time. But,
right. One or both of us, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
There are when you develop your business to a point that we have, there are tremendous demands upon your time, your thoughts. You continue to hire. You hopefully find really good people, as we have found, and you put them in. But the reality of that is that when you bring good people to your business grows again. And you're never going to get loose of that until it gets to I don't think you ever. If you have your passion and your love for what you're doing, and you recognize the benefits that it has granted you all your life, you're in touch. Right. You just don't get out of touch.
Right. And I would just say, and the one final mechanism, for lack of a better word to call it, that I recognize that we've always utilized is, I've called it, throwing down the white flag. Now, we don't actually throw a flag down, but we will verbally or somehow physically throw the cue that, okay, I'm not going to carry on with this. So we could be at work and have a disagreement, and we could be at home and have a disagreement, and we will. So for instance, let's take it at work. We're never going to, at least not now that we're older and much more mature, we're not going to take it to the point of people around us being uncomfortable, right? So, maybe too uncomfortable, right? But the point is that once we've had whatever level that is, one of us will throw down the white flag. So we could get 2 or 3 sentences of passion. Let's call it, in a nice, pretty word, passion, discussion about something that's going to happen. But what happens is one of us will, within 3 to 5 minutes, ask the other one a question in neutral tone about something else altogether.
Yes.
Right? And
it
that's the cue.
For everybody
that's
around
right.
us.
And us. It's our cue. Okay, That's the white flag.
Yep.
That thing is done. It's over with. Nobody has to be uncomfortable. I don't have to be uncomfortable. You don't have to be uncomfortable. There'll be no door slamming. Don't worry.
That's a good observation. That's how it happens.
Yeah, that's exactly it. One of us, will be like, that's ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. That's how it's going to go. And then 5 minutes later, so did we need gas in the car? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I think it's a good lesson for our employees, too, because, as I mentioned to the guys this morning, when you're married to each other, whether in the sense of you and I, but when the guys are married to us in terms of business and 30% of their lives are spent with us, there's going to be disagreements.
Right. They're not going to love us every day.
Yeah. And you have to move on from those disagreements, again, for the greater good. You have to get out. You have to get out of your personal funk and realize that it may not be contributing to the success of the business at this moment, and move on.
Right. And I would say, share one of the ways that I came to be able to do that is, going back many, many years when everything seemed so important and whatever it was, you really wanted something your way. I really wanted something my way, and everything is so important. It comes to a realization that over time you recognize, at least I'll speak for me, I'm looking at the person that I admire most in this world, number one, as a human being. Secondly, he's the person I admire most in this world as a business person. Thirdly, I have the same exact respect for Billy. There's nobody that can do in window treatments what Billy does. And that's just my opinion on it. And, somebody can try and change me of it. They're not going to be able to. And so when I would get really mad, like, oh, I can't believe, he this or Vinny that or Billy that, I would just get around to, if this is the best person ever to do this, you're questioning them. You're like, what are you doing there? And then I would move to, and LuAnn, if you give in and you do it his way, whether it's you or Billy, is the business going to crumble? Like, no, move on. This is stop getting dug in on silly things. And sometimes they weren't silly, they were big, but it's you just have to have a recognition of, don't get dug in on that. Get yourself that. It's like what you were saying with the guys today. Recognize that you have to function together as a team, and every day isn't going to go the way you want, and every decision isn't going to go the way you want. So sometimes you just have to back up.
After, this, once I turned 60, something light bulb went off, and I started to use a phrase, life isn't perfect.
Right. Before that, you always thought it was.
Before that, I was trying to make everything perfect. And I probably was very difficult to be around for a lot of But once you come to that understanding and you grasp it, and I use it with customers, I use it with our kids, I use it with everyone. Right. Life isn't perfect.
Right.
And it says a whole mouthful there.
Right.
So it basically says, things are not going to be in your control. Let them go, and move on.
Right,
and once you get that, it makes your life easier too. Believe me.
Right. So. Yeah, it's just the thing is to just step back, take a step, take a breath, look across at your husband or your wife, and just say, is it that critical? So I say the two things: is it critical to the business, and do I really need to inflict this agita, this pain, this strife on this person that otherwise is the most important person in the world to me? Like, what am I doing here? So it's a tough thing. I'll be interested to see over the coming weeks how the other couples, husband and wife teams, describe and discuss and see what their tactics have been and are in order for getting through this. I know with Shea and Syd McGee, they're only about 3 or 4 years into working together. They actually, Vin, you probably haven't heard the show yet because the day we're recording, it's not up. But they actually impressed me as having their head on straight, especially for so early in the game. And I thought that was really exciting. You could hear in the interview how much they love each other. You could hear in the interview that they do respect each other's zone of genius. Shea is the creative and everything beautiful and pretty, and all of the interaction was with the client and all of the the scale and the proportion and creating the magic and all of that. And Syd is operations, and he figures out the ways that they're going to bill and invoice and be more efficient and be more profitable and all of that stuff. So not only do they have it delineated, but you could also hear, it was so funny. They were so cute. I would ask one of them a question, and then they would spend like 3 minutes praising the other one. And I was like, okay, this is, and Shea finally said, we're probably going to have to ask each other the opposite questions, because all day long we're just going to keep telling you how good the other one is.
Yeah.
It was very cute.
That's the perfect basis, though, to start from. If you're going to be in business together and work together 10 hours a day and then spend the rest of the time together, you need that basis right from the get-go. Exactly.
Yeah. All righty, Vincenz. Well, I love your guts. You know that.
And I love you right back.
I thank you for being on my Power Talk Friday today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a long time.
All right, love. I'll talk to you in a little bit.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining me again today for another episode of A Well-Designed Business. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks in Livingston, New Jersey, your trade resource for custom window treatments and awnings. Learn more about WindowWorks at www.windowworks-nj.com. All of our music is original music by Room 2 Productions. Please contact us if you want to learn more about original music for your business or your events.